Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of the Fishing Teacher, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to spend some time with me on the video today. We're going to be talking about how much color matters. It's like when you're talking about lure color, is it the color? Is it the shade of the lure? Is it the profile of the lure? Is it how you work the lure? Actually, how much difference does color make as far as generating a strike from the bass? So I'm going to give you guys sort of some of my opinions from my own personal experience with this, and hopefully it'll help you guys catch some more bass down the road somewhere. Also, guys, before we get started, just a couple quick things to remind you guys of. Just want to invite everybody to please consider hitting that subscribe button here to the Fishing Teacher. Free and easy to do so, man. We've also got channel memberships you guys can check out. And also, guys, anyone interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, all you have to do is go to my Facebook page, Randy Blaukat Professional Angler, and just shoot me a private message, and I'll get back with you with the details on that. So really appreciate that. Okay, this is one of those topics that you're going to hear a lot about on the channel here, because when out of all the stuff that I have determined that makes a difference in bass fishing over all the years I've been fishing, it's things like lure color, water visibility, water temperature, water level. There's some foundational elements of bass fishing that really make a big difference. Now, a lot of people will say, and I've heard people talk about this before, it's like, oh, color's not that big of a deal in lures. It's like bass can only see, gray or brown or gray or black or white or whatever. I've heard all this. I don't believe any of that. I do not believe it. I can tell you from my own personal experience that color is a huge factor in bass fishing. It's a huge factor. And anyone that has not seen that has probably not fished for a long time in a wide diversity of conditions, because it makes a big difference between catching 20 fish in a day and catching 2 fish in a day. If you hit upon that right lure color, it makes a big difference. And the most difficult thing about selecting lure color is the fact that the color that the bass want is something that it's not like something you figure out the color they want that day and it lasts all day long. The color that the best color of a lure that bass prefer changes throughout the course of a day, because the reason it changes throughout the course of a day is that the light intensities are constantly changing throughout the course of a day. It's like, let's say, for example, you're in a normal bass fishing lake where you have water visibility of about 2 or 3 feet. That type of clarity is pretty much average. It's like if you put your boat in at 7 o'clock in the morning, the light intensity and the amount of shade and the angle of the sun is completely different than, say, at noon. It's like if you pull up to a main lake point at 7 o'clock in the morning, you're going to have a lot of low light on it, and you're going to have some shade on it. Sun's going to be at a low angle. The water is going to look a certain way at 7 o'clock in the morning. And when you put a lure in the water, let's say you put a perch pattern crankbait in the water at 7 o'clock in the morning, how that crankbait either blends in or stands out in that water clarity is going to look completely different than if you go back to that same point at noon and the sun's straight up overhead. And it's the same thing as, like, say, for example, you're there at noon and the sun's straight up overhead, shining down into that water that has 2 foot of visibility. And then you come in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a thunderstorm rolls in, it's cloudy, it's raining, you're back on that same point. It's different. The light intensity changes throughout the course of the day with different type of clouds and the different type of sun angle that you have, and the different type of wind. Wind will also reduce visibility in the water. So all those factors combined means that you constantly have to be changing your lure color to adapt to those conditions. So there's 2 considerations to make here when you're trying to determine the best color. The first one you have to consider is you have to let the bass tell you the color they prefer, and that just comes through experimentation, and that's the difficult one. It's like when you have to experiment until you hit on the right color. A lot of times you may go all day long and not figure it out. Sometimes you hit it right off the bat, but that is a variable that overrides any advice that I'm getting ready to give you here. Is you have to experiment and you have to let the bass tell you what they want, because a lot of times bass will be contrary to the logical way of thinking. Not all the time, but sometimes they are. I have found in my own fishing, it's like what I'm getting ready to tell you about some guidelines works about 50% of the time, and then the other 50% of the time it's a matter of experimentation and adjusting to the conditions. Here's some things about color in general that you have to use here. On lower light conditions, when you're talking about, you know, reduced visibility like early in the day or cloudy or windy, something like that, you need to use lures that stand out a little bit more. And most of the time those are going to be, you know, your whites, your pearls, your chartreuses, something that just visually stands out more. That is going to help the bass find the lure in those low light conditions, whether it be dirty water or, you know, low, you know, light penetration conditions. As that water clarity clears up and as the sunlight conditions get brighter throughout the course of the day, you have to make an adjustment to more subtle colors. Now, the subtleness of those colors depends upon the exact level of light intensity. So if you have a bright color, say you have a chartreuse-eyed blackback crankbait at 7 o'clock in the morning, later in the day as it gets brighter, you may have to go to a more subdued color. Now, that subdued color could be a crawdad pattern, like a green or brown. It could be a translucent type color, like a see-through type shad. It could be more of a pale chartreuse instead of like a bright chartreuse. It could be a faded pale, or it could be some type of subtle metallic finish, but something that doesn't quite stand out as much, something that's a little bit more, that blends into the water a little bit more. That will allow the bass to make more of a mistake. You know, that's not as visual. They're going to have to determine, you know, whether that lure is real or not based upon vibration and water displacement, not as much with color. So always remember that. It's like the clearer the water, the brighter conditions, you know, stay with those lures that are just more natural and blend into the water a little bit more. Now, that also changes with the species of bass. What I just explained to you there is a good rule of thumb for largemouth or spotted bass. Smallmouth bass are completely different. Smallmouth bass tend to prefer a little bit more brighter, aggressive lures, even in brighter conditions. So, for example, you know, if you're catching fish, largemouth bass on a fire tiger or a bone-colored jerkbait at 7 o'clock in the morning, by noon, those largemouth and spotted bass may quit biting that. But with a smallmouth bass, they'll continue biting that bright color up in the day, even if it's the light intensity's brighter. That's just a characteristic different of different species and the habits they have. So that's some general guidelines there, guys. But the main thing that I have found that outweighs everything is just experiment until you find out what the fish want. And sometimes also you will find colors. Some colors produce larger bass. They may not get as many bites, but if you can get them to bite a certain color, they're bigger fish. And usually those bigger fish prefer those brighter lures. The brighter, more aggressive lures a lot of times will attract those larger, more aggressive bass, but it may not be the best lure to catch a limit on. It may just attract the bigger fish. So if it sounds complicated, it is. Bass fishing is a complicated sport, and there's no definitive answers in it. It's like I can't sit and say, this is what bass do all the time and expect that to work 100% of the time. There's way too many variables, and there's way too much that we do not understand about the bass as far as what actually caused them to commit to bite a lure. And that's okay, because that's what makes bass fishing fun, is you want that unknown. Don't ever underestimate the power of the unknown in bass fishing. You don't want to go out there and absolutely know exactly what's going to happen or know where all those fish are at. That just takes the fun away from it. So anyway, guys, just a few random observations on color. Hope it helps you out, and we'll check later.